Are the best decisions based on intuition or facts and figures, right? This is a big question. And actually, the research on this is very clear. You need both. So, most of us tend to prioritize one or the other. Some of us are very sort of rational and fact based. Some might even think intuition is a bit of BS. Others might be all about their gut feeling, all about their intuition, but actually finding some kind of comfortable synthesis of the two is really the best. So, today I am going to talk about some misunderstandings about intuition and then what it really is. And when you understand what intuition really is, you'll understand why it is based on experience and knowledge and other things of that sort. And then 5 things that you need to really integrate intuition into your decision making. Okay, the misconceptions about intuition, which is going to help you understand what it really is. Intuition does not equal your gut response. Many people will say it does. Many people interpret their gut response as their intuition, but actually the science and the research shows that intuition is based on pattern recognition. And when people have more experience in a certain area, their pattern recognition becomes very, very quick. It's part of your procedural memory, part of the brain that develops habits, begins to see patterns so quickly you're not even consciously aware of it. So I actually think that the best way to think about intuition is that it synthesizes that gut response with the patterns we're aware of, but it also brings in emotional intelligence and an understanding of ourselves. So that's going to bring me to the second misunderstanding, which is that intuition is you either have it or you don't. Not true. Intuition can be developed. We can learn to rely more on our intuition as we develop emotional intelligence, as we develop an understanding of what our emotions really mean. Our intuition gets better. When we understand if we have a habitual emotion of anxiety, we get anxious all the time. Once we understand that that emotion can't always be listened to, we know to sort of calm it down so we can hear the intuition. So intuition can be strengthened and developed. Myth number 3 is that intuition is an emotion. It's not an emotion. To me, it's kind of like a system of processing, or it's a synthesis. It's kind of a whole body thing. It takes into account thoughts, physical feelings, emotional feelings, the whole thing. But people will confuse this, which is why I have a video on, is it anxiety or is it intuition? People will be like, oh, it's anxiety or intuition. Anxiety's an emotion, an emotional feeling, right? It has physical components, emotional components, and then it also has the cognitive interpretation of it, but it's a feeling. Intuition is a little bit more of a knowing. It's a way of coming to a conclusion. Another myth I've heard a lot reviewing some of the YouTube videos on this topic is that intuition is always fast. It's not always fast. Our gut response is very fast. Our unconscious biases, very fast. Some of our unconscious or subconscious instincts, very fast. And all of those get incorporated with our intuition, but those are not our intuition. And we don't always want to base our decisions or opinions of people on those automatic, instinctual, boom feelings. I know for myself and many of the people I've worked with over 20 years, being a therapist, intuition can take a little while for you to really be able to hear it and understand it. And intuition works best when we're not in a fight, flight, freeze mode. Intuition works best when we're not in that automatic reactive state. In fact, for me, I make good decisions sort of when I wake up in the morning, right? If I make a decision, if I'm struggling with something and I make it in the evening, I'll always be like, let me sleep on this and see how I feel in the morning. Because when I wake up from a relaxed state of sleep, my brain has processed information in a different way. And suddenly I know. I'll either be like, yep, that's the right decision, or No, I know I made that decision last night, but no, it's not the right way to go. Other people, their decisions pop into their brain when they're taking a jog or a walk with their dog, or they're in the shower, they're singing in the shower, not thinking about the problem, and all of a sudden, boom, it pops into their head because our whole brain integrates and works together when we are in a more relaxed, yet still alert state. So it's not always fast. What intuition really is a synthesis of our gut response, our pattern recognition, our understanding of our emotions and what we want on a gut level, right? Not always the most rational things that might be imposed on us by a society whose values might differ from ours, right? So your intuition kind of takes all of that into account. So you can look at the Harvard Business Review, which looks at this question from the point of view of business leaders, and you find titles such as Emotions Aren't the Enemy of Good Decision Making. Another article, Data and Intuition. Good decisions need both. And the third one being a few years ago by Laura Kutch, Can We Rely on Our Intuition? And she says yes, but she says it's best done for complex decisions when we also have data. So I'm just going to read this to you. But Marcy Farrell wrote in that Harvard Business School publication, when blending data and gut feeling, intuition is more reliable if the decision maker has extensive experience and expertise with the decision topic, right? So yeah, your intuition is strengthened by that pattern recognition, which is based on experience. In that same article, she also talks about how we as humans are wired to have pattern recognition, and a lot of it happens kind of subconsciously. So your intuition is not all about that gut feeling, it's also bringing in that pattern recognition. And she writes, intuition is often seen as the opposite of reason, but she talks about how that type of binary thinking, it's either reason or it's intuition, and they're totally separate from one another, how that can really limit our approach to making decisions. And intuition is most important when we are facing a decision that is complex, that doesn't have sort of a clear-cut answer. Now, this is obvious to you. Your intuition will know this right away. So let's say you're in the market for a Nalgene and you see this one advertised at $5 and then you see it somewhere else exactly the same advertised at $2. You do not need any intuition to know which one to pick, right? So simple decisions that are like, boom, rational, we don't have to worry about those. But most of the decisions that really kind of hamper us, or we might procrastinate about, or we might really worry about, are those that are really complex. And to be honest, there is not always one right answer. The desire for a right answer is a bit of a refusal to accept the uncertainty of life and the fact that things don't always turn out exactly the way we want them to. So intuition does not, even if your intuition is good, it does not guarantee a course of action. It does not guarantee that 5 years down the line, you'll be like, oh yes, perfect decision. You might also say, what would have happened if I'd chosen that other path, right? That's just life. But let's talk about the 5 things that are needed to pull in to make good decisions. So the number one thing that is needed to make a good decision is self-knowledge. One piece of this is knowing what are your goals, what are your values, what are your priorities. And I know that's not always clear cut, right? There's sometimes our values are in conflict, our goals can be in conflict. We want a job where we earn a lot of money, but we don't want to have to work 80 hours a week and we can't seem to find the right mix, right? Often things aren't clear, but having a good sense of yourself and what your priorities are is a key piece of making good decisions. And the other piece of self-knowledge is understanding yourself in terms of what are your triggers? What's your negative core belief that might be driving some bad decisions? And just as an aside here, I do have a PDF on Transform Your Negative Core Belief. It helps you both identify what your negative core belief might be and ways to reverse it to instill a positive. Anyway, might be helpful. But knowing that negative core belief, because that might be holding you back from getting into situations where you will gain more experience, where you will live a more fulfilling life, right? Where you will make better decisions. Knowing our biases or knowing that we have biases is important, because relying too much on a gut response that might reflect our internal bias can be very problematic for ourselves and for others, right? So really deep self-knowledge, super helpful here. And all of this can be developed. All of it can be strengthened and developed over time. All right, number 2, emotional intelligence. What are your emotions telling you? What emotion are you having? Where do you feel it in your body? What are the physical components that go with that emotion for you? Many people have like 2 or 3 go-to emotions and really can't identify any others. Other people might be like, well, I know that I am sad or anxious or whatever, but I don't feel any of it, right? All of our emotions have a physical and an emotional component, and strengthening your emotional intelligence, which goes with that point number 1 of self-awareness, can really help with your decision making. And I know this is not a quick 5-point list of like, you have a decision to make now, boom, 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 this is how you do it. But these are the things that can be developed over time so you can make really good decisions for your life. Okay, number 3 is bringing in the reason, bringing in the pros and cons, bringing in the facts, the figures, the analysis. What are you weighing, right? Sometimes writing out a pro-con list can be super helpful for the rational part of our brain. We don't want to ignore the data, and we don't want to totally override the data, right? But we want to see if our intuition and the data match, and when they don't, a little more investigation might be required. But in these situations, when the data and the intuition don't match, and it's not one of those habitual emotions, right? I just want to say that right up front. If your habitual emotion is anxiety and your gut feeling is, oh, don't do it, run away, right? I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about true intuition. If your true intuition is telling you something different than the data, research has shown that intuition is a better guide. Now, most people I know, when they make a decision based on their intuition and has conflicted with the data, will look back and be like, yeah, actually, that data reflected information that wasn't in my wheelhouse of values. It wasn't the stuff that was most important to me. So when we have that conflict, I think it often can be about societal expectations, family expectations, sort of things that are a little more imposed on us as being rational, when making a choice that makes you unhappy in your life is actually not rational. Even if you're making more money, the position has a higher status, etc. If you're not happy, you're not happy, right? So, number 3 was to take into account the data, the facts and figures, important for decision making. Number 4, allowing your whole brain to work here on the problem, which might mean putting it aside for a bit. It might mean forgetting about it. It might mean doing some kind of relaxation technique. People will sometimes turn to prayer. They'll turn to a more spiritual feeling. They'll kind of look for a little bit more. They might almost feel like it's mystical guidance. I think of that a bit as looking for like our higher self, like what would my higher self think here? But it's coming at the problem from a more grounded, authentic, sort of full authenticity of who we are, that approach, rather than a sense of urgency of, oh, I really have to do this and I really have to worry about it, because that goes into number 5 for making a good decision is to accept uncertainty. We cannot make these complex decisions if we are looking for a guarantee. And sometimes when I say that kind of thing on a video, when a lot of the people who watch my videos have anxiety and they get upset, like, How could you be emphasizing the fact that there are no guarantees? Because that is the reality. Denying reality doesn't really help. So intuition takes into account the fact that there are risks. Intuition can be like, yep, there's uncertainty here, but given everything, that's my decision. And it may or may not be right, but honestly, you might never know. You really might never know. I'm thinking of an example in my own life where I decided to take a job in Chicago. I had never been there before. Brought my whole family there. Didn't have any family there, not really any friends either. And in a lot of ways, it was a bad decision. But in some other ways, things came out of that were super positive and wouldn't have happened otherwise. So I would not even be able to tell you right now, was it the right decision or not? It certainly didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be, which makes me feel like, bad decision. But honestly, it was the best decision at the time, given the information I had and the various factors going on in my life. So understanding and incorporating this sense of uncertainty, the sense of every decision has some risks, and we weigh the pros and cons, we bring in our feelings, we bring in our gut sense, and we make the best decision we can at the time. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know if it was helpful. Do look for the link to the free PDF on transforming your negative core beliefs. I think that could be super helpful for you. And I look forward to seeing you next time.